Today I'm going to show you how to draw this bird using a grid transfer process. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out and draw a grid. So I'm going to line up my ruler on my picture. I've printed out a picture that's black and white of the bird I would like to draw. I'm going to line up my ruler, the 0 with the edge of the picture. And I'm going to make a dot at the 1, the 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to slide it over, line up the 0 with the top of the picture again, and draw a dot at the 1, 2, 3, and 4 inch mark. Then I'm going to align my ruler with the first and second dot and draw a line. I'm going to align my ruler with each of the dots that I've drawn and draw a line. Then I'm going to align my ruler with the side of the paper and make a dot at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and it ends at the 7. Slide it down and draw a dot at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then I will align these dots and draw a line straight down. So now I have a grid drawn on my black and white version of my picture. Now I'm going to get a larger sheet of paper, and this paper is a little bit thick because eventually we're going to be doing some watercolor paint on it, and I'm going to measure a 2-inch grid on this paper. So I'm going to line up my ruler with the paper at the 0, and I'm going to draw a dot at the 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Slide it over and draw a dot at the 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. So now I'm going to number the sides and the letter at the top. Now I'm going to show you how to use the grid to transfer the drawing. When I look at my square that I've drawn that's 1A, there's nothing in 1A, so I won't draw anything in 1A. When I look at 1B, there's a little tiny bit of a beak coming out right here. So I'm going to draw the beak and a little piece of the flower petal that the bird is holding in its mouth. Then I'm going to move on to 1C. And I'm going to see where does the top of the head of the bird cross that line? Where does this come? And I'm going to look at the positive space and the negative space, and I'm going to draw in the bird, connecting it to what I have drawn in the previous square. I will continue to go square by square until I have the drawing complete. I always tell my students when you're drawing something that's organic or from nature, it doesn't have to be exact, but using the grid is a really great way to get your basic proportions and very nicely and more correct. Also, when you're doing stuff like the leaves and the branch, don't worry about getting it perfect because every single angle you look at it from, it's going to look different. So if yours isn't perfect, it could just be from another angle, or if the wind blows, it would be moved. So just do the best you can, get it on there, And then the next step after this is you're going to trace it with a skinny Sharpie or pen. If you don't have a Sharpie or pen or something that's waterproof, it'll be a little bit difficult to do the third step, which is painting over it with watercolor. So try to use any kind of pen that is waterproof. Now we're going to start the shading process. For this project, the shading process is cross-hatching and stippling. If you would like to practice, a good way to do it is draw a value scale like this. Just draw a little rectangle with some lines on it with 4 to 5 spaces, and then practice doing your cross-hatching and stippling. Cross-hatching is basically like a hashtag line except at an extreme angle. So you just draw a lot of lines until it's really dark. Stippling is just dots, so you want to be real careful when you're doing your dots. When we do this in class, I have the students start with the darkest areas first. I erased my grid, but I left a little bit of a faint line so I could still use my grid to figure out where some of my shadows will go. For the darker areas, I recommend using cross-hatching because it's faster. And then I fill in around the darker areas with the dots so that it makes a nice transition into the lighter areas. You can use the cross-hatching and stippling to create the shapes and textures in your picture. Remember, it doesn't have to be exact or perfection. You're just trying to get the basic value of lightness and darkness of your animal that you're drawing. It could be a brightly colored bird, it could be a brightly colored frog. Those are what we do in my classroom, or any other animal that you would like to try to draw this way. So this is step 2, and as soon as I am finished with my shading on this one, we'll move on to step 3 by looking at our color version and painting watercolor on top of this. Once you have completed your pen and ink portion of your bird or your animal, it should look like it has shadow and value, and you can see all the details and texture. At that point, you're going to want to erase all the pencil lines the best that you can. Then you're going to use your color version for reference. It could be on a tablet, or I have printed mine out because I have a color printer. Then I'm going to take some watercolors and I'm going to try to mix colors similar to what I see here. So if I want to try to get a color blue similar to that blue, I'm going to take some of my blues and mix them here. I'm going to use lots of water because this is watercolor. You would need a lot of water on your watercolor to make it so that it's easier to apply to the paper. So once I get something that I feel like is close to that blue, I'm going to paint it on my bird. This is why you need to use a waterproof pen. So I'm going to paint it on, and where the areas are lighter, I'm going to use less paint. So if it's lighter here, I'm going to rinse my brush out a bit more and make that lighter. And if it's too dark, I can take a little bit of a towel and kind of smear it a bit so that I have that. It's best to stay light and go darker later because it's harder to take off the paint than it is to put it more on. And then also, if you're going to mix the color, you want to make sure you mix enough of that color to get the whole area that you're painting covered. Okay, so that's pretty nice, but I would like it a little bit of a darker blue, so I'm going to mix a little bit more, maybe another darker value of blue. and blend it in just in the darker areas around my bird's face. I'm going to use my finger a little bit just to smear that edge in. And then if I'm doing, with watercolor, if I'm doing two different colors next to each other and I don't want them to blend, I really need to make sure I wait for this blue to dry so that when I do the red, it doesn't just bleed all together. I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to wait for this blue to dry, and then I'm going to add a little bit more dark. I'm going to continue to paint on the other colors of my bird. All right, once you feel like you're at a good spot with the object or the animal that you're drawing and painting, then you can do the background. And when my students do their backgrounds, I just tell them pick a color that you think would look nice and kind of paint the whole thing one color, or you could do like an ombre if you want. It's not really important as long as the bird stands out. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then our project will be complete. Okay, so once you're finished with your background, your drawing is complete and you're painting, and I always tell my students, it's not supposed to look like a photograph of the bird. You're working from a photograph. It's not supposed to look like a photograph, number one, because it's a painting. And so it's not. You're using a medium, you're using different colors. And number two, you were in middle school, so it's supposed to be the best that you can. You want to make sure that it's better than you thought you could do so that you feel like you've improved. I don't want anyone to judge themselves based on what I can do or what their friends can do, or that it should look just like the photograph. You need to just do the best you can, and in the end, if your drawing or your painting is better than it was before, you should be very proud of yourself.